light within my heart, light within my thoughts, light within my words. May one and all and everything, blessed and loved, ever be. Welcome. I am Sister Who. Today I wanted to offer a few, just my own personal reflections on creating safety for gay or lesbian, bisexual, transgender youth within families. And the ideal of a family is that this is a supportive bunch of people who understand you and stand by you and accept you, and whatever your family, that's what really matters. And of course, the incarnations, the actual examples of families are anywhere on the spectrum of that, closer or further in various respects. Some will be very good at standing together, but they really don't have a genuine, unconditional love for each other within that. They stand together because they're family, not because they actually love each other. Because if you look at the character of their actions toward each other, they really don't. On the other hand, there are families who love each other on some level, but don't particularly hold each other accountable, nor are they necessarily available in time of need. That of course I love you, really I do love you, but I'm busy and I can't do anything about it. It becomes love that is of the heart and of the tongue, love that is spoken or felt but not acted. And again, it's not holistic, it's not complete, there's no wholeness to it. When someone is looking in the mirror, or in whatever figurative sense, not necessarily a literal mirror, but becoming aware that they are unique somehow in a categorical way, not just that they have a different favorite color or whatever, but they fall in love with different genders than they're told they're supposed to fall in love with. That I grew up being told that boys fall in love with girls, and and that's the way, quote, that's the way everything is, except I found that wasn't true. That the kinds of relationships that the dominant heterosexist population says should be weren't manifesting in my life. And the first question, I guess, in terms of creating safety for youth who are finding that about themselves, first of all, whether there's communication, whether they feel like there is somebody to whom they can talk about these issues and about these questions, not, especially even being able to talk about them, to get them out so they're not rolling around inside the head in ways that can't be pinned down. There's really something therapeutic, I think, about being able to make it concrete, to write it out on paper, and even if it's just a question, to say, this is my question for now, and how do I address this question? And not to have anyone immediately wanting to superimpose an answer that may not be genuine. Why do I feel this way? Well, it's kind of a rhetorical question. Rhetorical questions are those formal sorts of questions that we ask that really don't have specific answers, because it's like asking, why can't everyone be nice to everyone? Well, there's 1,000 different reasons if you really want to know the answer, but it's a rhetorical question, in that it's a question we ask to express an emotion of exasperation, not because we actually want an answer to it. In some ways, as people, as youth are finding themselves, or discovering themselves, noticing differences, if they're in a world that is loaded with expectations, it can be very problematic. If a youth is in a family, for example, where one of the elders makes really negative comments about gay and lesbian people, and then they begin to discover that they are gay or lesbian, or bisexual or trans, because they know the negative opinions and the negative attitudes of the adults, it makes it that much more difficult to say anything, to be upfront about it, to be honest about it. And they are very much moved. The increasing awareness of their own truth makes them increasingly defensive about anyone knowing that truth. And you cannot embrace love, embrace the divine, embrace anything good while running from the truth of yourself. To the extent that someone commits to avoiding the truth of themselves, possibly for their entire life, they may find themselves more or less forced or manipulated into all sorts of addictions, all sorts of avoidance behaviors, prescription drug usage, spending their entire life on antidepressants and never facing the fact that the reason they're depressed is because they're on some level about discovering being gay. That even if on some level unavoidably they are gay, if they spend their whole life hating themselves for being gay and not wanting to be gay, coping mechanisms have to be found, because it's a person at war with himself. It's a young woman at war with herself. And there are young men and young women in high school who get involved in sexual activity trying to prove that they're not what they are, because they don't have a family that will say, it's fine. Whoever and whatever you find yourself to be, it's fine. It's good. We're going to love you either way. Lots of people, lots of families, lots of people want to say, we just want you to be happy. But so few of them in practice, it seems, genuinely mean it. We just want you to be happy, but we want it to look typical or usual or normal. We just want you to be happy as long as your happiness includes becoming financially wealthy, as opposed to being a humanitarian worker in a third world country or something like that. We just want you to be happy as long as it is within those parameters. Real love is unconditional. That's not a new statement. It's been said thousands, perhaps millions of times. Within a family, the expectation is that the love will be real, that it will be genuine. I suspect there are very few families who actually know that reality, however, that most of them are struggling to deal with all sorts of issues, a lot of them past historical issues, personal histories. What makes this all the more confusing is that you have children growing up within a context of an emotional and psychological and social history that they don't even know. They have no idea why mom and dad act the way they do. They have no idea why the communication does or does not happen the way it does within their family. They're totally new on the scene, and they're trying to make sense of mixed messages and communication that is being conveyed in confusing ways. And out of this confusion of why don't you say what you mean, or why don't you mean what you say, they, gay and lesbian and bisexual and trans youth, additionally now have to come to terms with being an anomaly that in some places society isn't ready to accept. But it begins right at home with them first wrestling with whether their own family will accept it. If there's acceptance at home, that offers a base, a launching pad, a safe harbor, if you will, for dealing with all the craziness outside the home. Perhaps there are even situations where whole families have picked up and relocated because they found that the environment where they were living was not friendly to their children's idiosyncrasies and unique qualities. That they moved for the sake of the children because they didn't want to be someplace where it wasn't safe for their children to be who and what they were, who and what they found themselves to be. That would seem to be a safe family. The challenge, for our current subject is whether even that, I mean, it's not really about labeling this family safe or unsafe, but becoming aware of how safe and in what ways unsafe. That there are families where it comes to different degrees. If a young man is gay, that's one thing. If a young man is gay and begins to feel an inclination to perform as a drag queen, that's something quite different. If a young man is gay and feels an inclination to explore what is commonly, what it was sometimes referred to as the leather scene, particular interpersonal dynamics that involve role-playing and fetishes and all sorts of complications that are way beyond the scope of this show to really explain. The point being, it is not unconditional love. It is not unconditional acceptance. On the flip side, I'm sure somebody would ask the legitimate question, are families capable of unconditional love? Are we capable of unconditional acceptance? Capable, I would have to say yes. But this kind of gets into that discussion of is it impossible or simply improbable? There's a great many things that are, as near as we can tell, absolutely possible, but they're so severely improbable that no one would ever expect them. No one would ever look for them or hope for them or try to build a future on them. Is it possible for anyone to be accepting? Of course it's possible, but it may be severely improbable. The point of families, though, is not to create a stagnant, frozen form like pouring water into a glass. The glass will not change shape. It's hard, it's rigid, it's formed. You could melt it, you could break it, you could do all sorts of things to it, but it is its form. A family isn't like that. A family is an organic, malleable, evolving system of more kinds of reality and more kinds of relationships and more kinds of feelings and thoughts and actions than any of us could name. To be within a context that is so fluctuating, and then to find the discovery of oneself being so anomalous creates massive difficulties. And I'm not making this a competition saying that youth who are gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender have it harder than everyone else. Everyone has their respective challenges. We all have to work through them. We have to make sense of them. Ideally, the family will help us do that. And if one's biological family will not, ideally we can find an extended family through friends, through acquaintances at church, through acquaintances at places where we work, through people we meet in the park, through common interest clubs, archery clubs, any travel clubs, any horse clubs, equestrian clubs, dog show clubs, the county fair. I mean, there's no limit for anywhere where people come in contact with each other may be a place of finding a member of one's extended family. Walking down the street or through the mall, joining a municipal choir of some sort, just because you like singing, joining a band just because you like playing the guitar. Any of those can become extended family, but I find that again and again and again, people aren't really looking for those sorts of dynamics to develop there. And because we don't look for them, we don't support them when they happen, we don't encourage them, we're not aware of them when they start to develop. If you have the family of a soccer club for boys and girls from a number of different public schools, and they, by capitalizing on the team spirit and the things they learn from the coach or instructor, they become a sort of extended family to each other, so that even when somebody's family is going through a divorce or has suffered the tragedy of someone being killed in a car accident, that the members of the team come together and support each other as if they were more than a team, as if they were actually family to each other. The challenge within that, and where we come back to creating safety, we need to watch how we talk about differences. Because whenever a negative comment or a negative joke passes our lips, it conveys to everybody around us the subjects that may not be safe to discuss with us. And the more we speak as if we assume that everybody agrees on a certain principle or policy, the more we act as if we all think this, the more difficult it becomes for the person who doesn't think that way to speak up and to say, I really don't feel good about this. And you say, why? Well, because I don't see things that way, and because I don't think that's the best way to deal with the situation. But society or family groups, whether they're biological or social, have this way of putting enormous pressure on individuals who are trying to come to terms with the truth they're finding within themselves. What that invites of any family unit is a commitment to being a unit that pursues and embraces and supports truth, regardless of what form that truth takes. That if the truth, for example, is that one of the members of the family is most empowered by liturgical spirituality within a Roman Catholic Church, whereas another's spiritual hunger is for forms that are more commonly found within Buddhist meditation practices, that as a family, valuing each individual, each will be supported and given what they need to find their optimum spiritual health. That a requirement for homogeneity ultimately makes things unsafe. That any expectation or presumption of homogeneity makes things unsafe. That anything that discourages open, honest communication makes things unsafe. And in those situations, if someone begins to find that he or she is gay, lesbian, bi, or trans, do they have someone to talk to? Do they have someone who validates that whoever and whatever you are, it's good. We still love you. You're a member of the family. If you need to go in that direction, then that's the way we're going. I'm reminded of the wonderful scene in the movie Muppets from Space, in which it is disclosed that the character Gonzo is actually an E.T. left behind left behind on Earth by some unique ETs who all look just like him, and they make connection. But on the way to making connection, before the film kind of wrestles with the definition of family, because he says, I need to go to the beach. Whether you believe me or not, whether you have faith in me or not, I need to go to the beach because that's where I believe I'm going to meet them. And none of the other Muppets believe, but because they value Gonzo, Kermit thinks a moment and simply says, well, then I guess we're all going to the beach. And it wasn't that he said he agreed. It wasn't that he said he believed Gonzo, though obviously Gonzo's faith was rewarded. There was a familial kind of commitment there that even when they didn't understand, they were not going to consent to judge him or to label him crazy or to refuse to support him. But they were going to be there for him, even if it meant setting everything aside and taking out a day to go to the beach and wait. And of course, when they got there, there was the usual struggles of whether or not to have faith in this perceived familial connection that Gonzo had to that point never experienced before. Thankfully, their faith was rewarded. The ETs do show up, and lo and behold, they look exactly like Gonzo, and they invite him to come home with them. At which point he remembers that he already has a family here on Earth. And they respect his choice, and they go back to the stars, and he stays with all the other Muppets, because they were the family that stood by him even when they didn't understand. One of the things that is most essential for creating safety for gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender youth is that most of the time neither they nor anyone else will really understand what is unfolding. It's a process of discovery. It's a process of sifting through so many variables and so many perceptions that it becomes bewildering at times. And you have to be patient and even sit with the bewilderment, sit with the confusion, and look at the gray cloud of unknowing and just say, well, I'm here, I'm listening, I'm open to whatever you have to tell me. If it's this way or if it's that, I think I could live with either one, as long as I can be true to myself. And as long as I can find a creative and wonderful way of expressing myself and of sharing myself with the world around me. And isn't that something so worth celebrating for any family? That when, in the case of to follow the movie metaphor further, when Gonzo is reunited with his family around this spaceship, that the first thing they decide is necessary is to have a celebration. That for absolutely everyone there, it becomes something to celebrate, a reason to dance, a reason to sing, a reason to embrace and to express in the most fun way possible all the capacities that each of them has. Gonzo has had a lifelong fascination with being fired from a cannon, like the stuntman in the circus. And lo and behold, when his family arrives from outer space, that's one of their supreme rituals, is to fire him from a cannon. And it's fascinating as the movie brings out all these things that subconsciously Gonzo's been doing all his life, that lo and behold were hints about his true family that he didn't realize existed. Creating safety for gay and lesbian and bisexual and transgender youth is not an easy task, even within the families. It's centered around the openness to the unknown, to the tolerance of the unknown, especially during the time of transition, and to the commitment that stems from unconditional love. Unconditional love may not be something that we can touch for more than a few minutes at a time, but it is, for me, the center of the archery target. When I approach an archery target with a bow and arrow, I never know whether I'll hit the center of the target, but it doesn't make sense to aim for anything else. And so I always aim for the center of the target, and lo and behold, from time to time, I do hit the center of the target. And those are the times, like the reunion of Gonzo's family, that are worth celebrating. The supporting a family member through the struggles, the hope is always that the time of celebration will come. But sometimes it does take a lot of waiting. And that's specifically where the strength of the family provides a vessel, a container, if you will, to keep that confusion, to keep that the tension and the pain of waiting from overflowing and becoming unbearable, becoming unmanageable. But it is so essential because of it not being known, and because not even the person going through the transition knows where it will end. Because the person experimenting with different kinds of hairstyles and clothing and associations and activities, experimenting with how they express themselves to the world and with how their expressions define them or define the way they're trying to satisfy others' expectations. Honesty is so central to all of this, but it has to be honesty with oneself and honesty with one's family. And the family that requires something other than honesty has made itself adversarial and unsafe to the youth. What will win in that struggle, only time will tell. It is my hope that by being Sister Who on this show, that I'm helping to make the world a place in which, even if, unlikely though it is in 99% of the cases, even if a gay, lesbian, bi, or trans youth should find themselves drawn to theatrical appearance and totally anomalous categorization, a gay man who is a 21st century nun, who is an eclectic mystic in terms of spirituality, who reaches for that which is truly God, over and above what any particular religion says is God, and yet allows that which is truly God may express itself through any of the religions or none of them. Creating safety within families is finding that group of individuals who can allow God to be God, can allow the individual to be the individual, and can equally be themselves with integrity, with honesty, owning their questions, owning their struggles, owning the things that hurt, and consequently being able to fully own the celebration when we do make it through.